So it has become pretty evident that the Jets and the Wild are not exactly best pals. This, in my opinion, underrated rivalry has been brewing for years now. The Foligno Superman punch a few years back, or Dillon catching Foligno high last year, which resulted in a full-out brawl. But when players begin intentionally trying to injure and admit to it, that doesn't have a place in hockey. For a little context, in March of last season, Logan Stanley fell awkwardly on Kaprisov and resulted in him being injured. The Wild were understandably not happy, and so in the following month when they met again, that's when we had even the coaches going at it. In that game, after Reeves got away with what I would call a boarding penalty, Hartman would add insult to injury after he got Ehlers hard in a hit that resulted in Ehlers getting injured and pretty much missing all of the playoffs. And this was definitely not a clean hit in my opinion. Repeatedly, I have had Wild fans disagreeing with me on this, but either way, it did result in a one-game suspension, and Ehlers having long-lasting setbacks that lasted well into this season's preseason. And so with that then, it gets us to this past week. In the first of what was a back-to-back meeting between these two, Kaprisov took a couple of cross-checks to the back hip area from Dillon in a play that resulted in him being injured again. He's been out ever since, and that is going to bring up bad memories. So overall, regardless of how dirty you think this hit was last season or these cross-checks were just the other night, both fans have had plenty to point fingers about. And all of that spilled over to the following night. Right off the bat, there was a scrap. Maroon and Lowry dropped the gloves, and they settled it. So you'd think. But just over a minute later, in an offensive zone face-off for the Jets, Nemesnikov got tossed and Cole Perfetti was in. And on that face-off, Hartman caught him up high with a high stick that went uncalled. I actually watched this game, and aside from the penalty being missed, I didn't think too much of it. But that then gets us to today. After news came out that Hartman had been fined $4,400, the max allowed, Perfetti in a media scrum had this to say.
Did he make it pretty clear that he was doing that as retribution for what had happened the day before?
Yeah, he did. He made it pretty obvious, for what happened to Kaprisov there. I mean, he's obviously going to be out for a little bit. That's what he thought he needed to do. So luckily, it was just a couple stitches, and yeah, I was mic'd up. So to come out and blatantly say it to the mic, it worked out in our favor.
So Hartman, who just 2 games prior was actually suspended for his nasty slew foot on DeBrincat, came up to Perfetti and let him know that the high stick was intentional. That is not a good look. Now, luckily, Perfetti wasn't terribly injured. I'm sure it didn't feel good.
It didn't feel nice. Face was pretty sore, but it's all good now.
But regardless, Perfetti is a skilled young player. He's the youngest and one of the smallest guys on the team. To go after him, a guy who, by the way, had absolutely nothing to do with these cross-checks, not exactly a tough guy move on Hartman here, who seems to have mastered the art of dirty plays that look unintentional. There's just simply no place in the NHL for it, and with this coming out, people were wondering, did the league know before they fined him? And actually, they couldn't have used the tapes, which I actually didn't even know about. So while I would love to have these tapes released so we could hear for ourselves exactly what he said, who knows if we'll ever see them, but crazy rivalry here, so their next game in February should be a good one. With that, that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it very much, and I will see you in the next one.